some excellent insights. He will be staying with us, but we move away now from India-Pakistan tensions and head to Europe, where Russian President Vladimir Putin has proposed direct talks with Ukraine, but he remains silent on the 30-day unconditional ceasefire demanded by Kyiv and its Western allies. Speaking from the Kremlin, Putin said he wants talks to begin without preconditions in Istanbul on May the 15th, which is the same city where failed peace talks were held back in 2022. Let's have a listen to what Vladimir Putin said.
Предлагаем киевским властям возобновить переговоры, прерванные ими в конце 2022 года. Возобновить прямые переговоры, причем, подчеркну, без всяких предварительных условий. Начать предлагаем без промедления уже в следующий четверг, 15 мая, в Стамбуле, там, где они проводились ранее и там, где они были прерваны.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Kyiv is ready to meet if Russia confirms a full and lasting ceasefire from May the 12th. Volodymyr Zelensky calls it the first step to ending the war. He warns there's no reason to continue killing. Ukraine awaits Moscow's response on the 30-day truce. In Kyiv, major European leaders have backed the unconditional 30-day ceasefire. French President Emmanuel Macron called Putin's talks offer a first step, but not enough. Speaking at the Polish-Ukrainian border, he demanded a full 30-day ceasefire without conditions. Macron warned of massive sanctions if Russia violates it. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump says he will keep working with Kyiv and Moscow to end the war. He made these remarks on his Truth Social platform, calling it a potentially great day for both nations. Trump says stopping the bloodbath could save hundreds of thousands of lives. Well, joining us once again to discuss these developments in the Russia-Ukraine conflict is Stephen Nagy, Professor of Politics and International Studies at the International Christian University, of course joining us from Tokyo in Japan. Stephen, thank you for staying around. Let's look at these comments from Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky. It seems like positive steps are being made towards peace, but still a difference in opinion, still no agreement on a ceasefire date or when direct talks should happen. What are your thoughts on the recent comments from both Putin and Zelensky?
Well, I think President Zelensky has been consistent in moving towards peace, but also trying to build strong economic security and diplomatic partners within the EU, and of course moving towards the United States and the Trump administration. We saw that disastrous meeting within the White House, but I think both sides have walked back from the bad optics and moved towards, again, signing a rare earth deal, allowing for a longer-term commitment by the United States in the Ukraine. Even today, or this week, our European leaders have come in and asked for a 30-day ceasefire. So this is moving in the right direction. The question is Putin moving in the same direction? And I think here, Vladimir Putin's demands have really fundamentally not changed since the beginning of the war with Ukraine. I think that he is taking a tactical pause, understanding that his troops are in a more positive position on the front line in Ukraine, and another meeting in Istanbul or whenever he would like to meet really will be another tactical pause, trying to use diplomacy to continue to get success on the ground. Over the long term, the Russians have used and are continue to understand the world through spheres of influence, and through this idea of one country's security should not come at the expense of another country's security. And with that, Russia really, I think, under Vladimir Putin or any particular leader, really is not going to move, I think, away from their broader position of trying to dominate, I think, the Ukraine and Eastern Europe in a way that keeps it out of NATO, preferably out of the EU, and largely under Moscow's influence.
Absolutely. Stephen, I want to look at the unity that we're seeing from Ukraine and its allies, also from Donald Trump, who in recent times has, of course, shown more warmth to Russia. Those direct meetings taking place with Steve Witkoff on 4 occasions with Vladimir Putin. The coalition of the willing, as well as the US, really pushing this 30-day ceasefire. In your opinion, is this just sending Vladimir Putin a very clear ultimatum?
Well, I think it's really important that the European leaders are showing up in Kiev and making these declarations to support a 30-day ceasefire. But ultimately, are they going to provide the security goods so that the Ukrainians can continue to fight and continue to resist Russian expansionism? And this is the big question. Since Donald Trump came into his presidency on January 20th, 2025, he has put pressure on the Europeans to step up to the plate, do more on the Ukraine so that the United States can step back and focus really on the Indo-Pacific and China and building strong partnerships with countries like India, Japan, and Australia to deal with the challenge that exists in this part of the world. I don't think that equation has fundamentally changed. I don't think the Europeans have basically put the goods on the table to help the Ukrainians, and that this diplomatic coming together is really nice in Ukraine, but ultimately they need to provide the goods so that the Ukrainians continue to fight. I think moving forward, there needs to be more creative ways to invest in the Ukrainian economy, like the United States has done with the rare earth deal, to basically anchor themselves into the Ukraine so that not only is the military challenge that comes from Russia a threat to the EU members, but there's shared economic prosperity. And again, I think there's many ways to start thinking about this, but the solution or the way forward with Ukraine is not just through military, but it's through economic investments, economic ties, building strong social ties and diplomatic ties with Ukraine, and ultimately helping Ukraine govern itself better through less corruption, more rule of law, and hopefully representative democracy.
Yes, absolutely. Also joining us is Glenn Grant, former advisor of Defence Minister of Ukraine, who's joining us from Riga in Latvia. Glenn, thank you as always for being here with us. I'd like to get your reactions to what Volodymyr Zelensky has said, talking about the positive steps being made with these talks in Turkey being suggested by Vladimir Putin for the 15th of May, but also affirming that the best option is a ceasefire for 30 days from the 12th of May. What are your thoughts?
Well, I agree completely with what Stephen said, which is the sort of I'm going to say the realistic view of the world. I don't have any faith in anything that Putin said, because out of his office, his team has already come the view that they will only move forward if there is a stopping of aid to Ukraine from Western allies. So that's hardly what I would call a meeting without preconditions. I mean, basically, Putin has already laid down the conditions that he wants, which is his, governance of the four regions of Ukraine, which means taking more land, and just taking more control of everything. So what he's actually asking for is a complete control of a large chunk of Ukraine and a large chunk of the politics of Ukraine, which makes Ukraine pretty much ungovernable. So when they had the last meeting in Istanbul, they basically were trying to get Ukraine to acquiesce and to give up the country. And that is exactly what Putin will try and do again in Istanbul for a second time. So I don't have any doubts about what he will try and do. I think that you could say that Zelensky has now got the moral upper hand, and the Europeans have joined him in the moral upper hand. But as Stephen has said quite clearly, the Europeans really have not done anything of any value yet. They're dripping stuff into Ukraine, but they're still sitting back. And as one of my military colleagues used to say, it's all support without help, and that's how I feel about it. They badly need to step up and do something real, and to actually show Putin that the West is serious about this. Because until someone does something real and actually shows that they're willing to get their feet dirty in this war, I'm afraid Putin will just keep going, and meetings like Istanbul will be of no value whatsoever.
Glenn, staying with you, what would be the benefit of an initial 30-day ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine, then looking towards a full-term ceasefire?
Well, the two things are not linked. There will be no full-term ceasefire because Russia has never actually held to a ceasefire in this war, in all 11 years of this war at all. There have been already 28 ceasefires, many of which have been actually signed on the dotted line by the Russians, and they've not actually held to them at all. So I don't see that another one is going to be held to, because Putin has no reason to do so. He's moving forward. He's got lots and lots of new friends and old friends with him, as we saw on the 9th in the parade. So he feels he's winning. Why would he stop? Why would he have a ceasefire, except possibly to bring forward as many troops as he can for a major counterattack against a point that he considers to be a weak point in the Ukrainian lines? There is no benefit in the Ukrainian side for a ceasefire for 30 days, because the Ukrainians are not going to be able to do anything of any value, of any military value, to hold against the Ukrainians in 30 days, unless the West produces a huge amount of drones and weapons in 30 days to allow them to be 30 days stronger. And I don't see that happening.
Glenn, what else is required from the wider global community? Of course, North Korean involvement. China's President Xi Jinping was right next to Vladimir Putin for much of the Victory Day celebrations on the 9th of May. Could the Indo-Pacific region play a part in potential peace between Russia and Ukraine?
That's a very good question. I think the first thing that there is needed is a plan, because there isn't one. There isn't one for the short term, and there isn't one for the long term. And a plan that actually decides how we're going to tackle Russia in both cases. In the short term, we need to actually put more money and find some way of punching Russia in the nose to make them stop. And at the moment, all we're doing is sort of poking our finger gently towards him and saying stop, 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 and being soft and gentle. And that doesn't work with Russia, and it's not going to work. Making suggestions about peace deals and everything, they're just irrelevancies in this war. It's a war for the survival of Ukraine, and the only way for Ukraine to survive is to fight and fight to the death. There is no other way, and Putin's not going to give them any other way. Long term, yeah, perhaps we can actually we can work on China a bit more. But I'm sorry, but if America starts having trade tariff arguments with China, that is hardly a good way to bring them on side. It's doing the reverse. It's actually making them unhappy and pushing them more towards Russia, not towards US. So, I look at US and I start saying, well, if US is on our side and actually wants the West to be positive in this war, positive on the Ukraine side, they're not going about it in a very, very clever way. So what can the far side do? Well, they can work on China. But if China is going to start taking bits of sea and causing problems with Vietnam and with Philippines, I don't see much joy down there either.
Yes, Glenn, to bring an end to this discussion, I'm glad you brought up President Trump and his administration, because, of course, for Ukraine, there have been fractured relations. It seems there's been a general flip-flopping. At the moment, it seems Trump is on side. Of course, the rare earth minerals deal has now been signed. What does the US really need to do past these discussions with Putin, of course, and conversations in Saudi with Marco Rubio that have taken place already?
Just provide proper support. I mean, if you actually see the amount of support that was provided in the Iraq war, in the Afghanistan war, and for the Afghanistanis was in trillions. We are still only scraping the surface for the amount of support that's been given to Ukraine. I mean, not even 10% of what was given to Afghanistan. So, you know, this is, America could do much, much, much more. It's got weapons galore sitting in the Nevada desert. It's got A-10 aircraft that they're going to scrap. Hundreds of things that they could do more than they are doing at the moment, which would give Ukraine a proper chance to put a halt to this and actually create a position where they could demand a proper peace deal. But at the moment, it's not happening.
Glenn Grant, as always, thank you ever so much for joining us and providing your insights. Stephen will once again be staying with us, and we, of course, will bring you all of the updates as we get them from